Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're the podcast that plunges into complex topics to pull out the real gems of knowledge, giving you that shortcut to being, well, genuinely well-informed.
And today, we're looking at something really fascinating. It's based on Professor Kuan-Pin Su's latest work, a new paper, and a special lecture that honestly push back against some pretty established ideas in mental health.
Exactly. It's a deep dive into omega-3 fatty acids as a first-line treatment for depression. We're talking about thinking outside the box, patient choice, and specifically we'll be focusing in on the EPA part of omega-3s.
Right. So our mission today, we've got three main things we want to unpack for you.
First up, we're going to tackle some deeply ingrained myths about the usual first-line treatments for depression.
Then we'll explore this really exciting field of nutritional psychiatry. See how it's becoming a practical science.
And finally, we'll get into why shared decision-making, that conversation between you and your doctor, is so absolutely vital when you're weighing up treatment options. Should be eye-opening.
Definitely. So let's start with the current landscape. How we usually approach depression treatment and maybe where some of those myths come from.
Okay, so depression, it's incredibly common, right?
Yeah.
Affects something like 10% of people globally.
Yeah, and in the U.S., just looking at 2019 data, about 11.5% of adults had at least mild symptoms. It's a huge public health issue.
But here's the kicker. The traditional antidepressants, the ones used most often, their effectiveness, well, it's often quite limited.
That's a key point. Studies show a really significant placebo response rate, sometimes up to 40%.
40%,
Yeah.
that's huge. It means a big chunk of the benefit people feel might not actually be from the drug's specific chemical action.
Exactly. And that leads us to this concept, the number needed to treat, or NNT. For common ones like escitalopram or duloxetine, the NNT is around 7 or 8.
Okay, so NNT, what does that actually mean for you, the person taking the medication? An NNT of 7 or 8 sounds maybe not that impressive.
Well, it means you'd have to treat 7 or 8 people with the drug for just one person to get a benefit significantly greater than they would have gotten from a placebo anyway.
Right, so only 1 in 7 or 8 people gets that extra benefit directly from the drug itself.
Precisely. It really puts the real-world impact into perspective, doesn't it? Especially for milder cases.
And big studies seem to back this up, like the STAR trial that was a massive study. It found the remission rate for citalopram after 14 weeks was only, what, 33%?
Yeah, just 33%. And even worse, after trying multiple different treatments over a whole year, a third of the patients still hadn't reached remission.
That's sobering. It really makes you question how effective these first-line options are for a large number of people.
It really does. And that's before we even talk about side effects.
Ah, yes. The side effects. They aren't trivial, are they?
Not at all. They range across all sorts of systems. You've got neurological issues like insomnia, agitation, then gastrointestinal problems, sexual dysfunction's a big one, cardiovascular effects.
And in rare cases, really serious stuff like serotonin syndrome.
Exactly. So you have to weigh that risk-benefit balance very carefully, especially if the potential benefit over placebo isn't that large to begin with.
Which brings us to challenging the conventional wisdom, like the NICE guidelines in the UK. They actually recommend against routinely offering antidepressants as the first thing for less severe depression, right?
That's correct. For subthreshold symptoms or mild depression, they say hold off on the meds initially. And the reason? Because the statistical difference between the drug and placebo effects in mild depression is often tiny, too small to really detect reliably.
Mostly because that placebo effect is just so powerful in those cases.
Precisely. And this ties into what Professor Su calls imprecision medicine. Think about it. A diagnosis like major depressive disorder, MDD, it's based on a checklist of symptoms.
Right. So 2 people can have the same MDD diagnosis, but actually experience depression quite differently. Different symptom combinations.
Exactly. Which makes finding a single biological marker or a single magic bullet treatment that works for everyone with that label,
Yeah.
well, almost impossible.
So when a drug gets approved, often based on that statistical significance, that P less than 0.05.
Yeah, it just means the average result for the group taking the drug was better than the average for the placebo group. It absolutely does not mean that every single person taking the drug felt meaningfully better.
Or even that your improvement was necessarily better than someone who happened to respond well to the placebo.
Right. And that NNT for duloxetine, again, around 7 to 9. It just keeps hammering home that point. Treat a lot of people for one extra success story compared to placebo.
And there's research, isn't there, directly challenging the efficacy in mild to moderate cases? I remember reading about Kirsch's work.
Oh, absolutely. Several major analyses, Kirsch, Turner, Fournier, looked at this. Kirsch's analysis of FDA data was particularly striking. It found SSRI effectiveness was only statistically significant in severe depression.
Only in severe cases. Wow.
For mild to moderate depression, the drug effect was often clinically insignificant compared to placebo. It suggests the benefits we often hear about might be overestimated for many people.
Okay, so if the evidence for mild cases is shaky and the side effects are real, why do these drugs dominate treatment so much?
Well, it's a combination of things. They did have high-quality clinical trials, at least for initial approval. There's a plausible molecular biology story behind them. Quality control is strict.
And they get endorsed by medical societies, heavily marketed.
And crucially, as you touched on earlier, free insurance coverage. That's a massive factor. It steers choices. It makes it the default, easy option.
Yeah, that free part really lowers the barrier compared to, say, paying out of pocket for something else, even if that something else might be safer or potentially more effective for you personally.
Exactly. The problem isn't that drugs exist or are available. It's that they often become the only option presented, especially for something as complex as depression.
And what about clinicians? Many doctors feel they do see good results with antidepressants, even in milder cases. How does that fit with the research?
That's a really interesting point. It's not necessarily that they're wrong about what they see. Part of it is that powerful placebo effect, up to 40%, remember.
Right. The patient feels better, the doctor sees improvement.
And there's also the genuine therapeutic benefit from the whole process, building a relationship with a doctor, feeling heard, reduced anxiety just from seeking help, plus selection bias.
The patients who find it helpful are the ones who keep coming back, reinforcing the perception of effectiveness.
Exactly. Patients who don't benefit might just drop out. So the clinical impression can sometimes diverge from the large-scale trial data. It's complex.
Okay, so we've definitely raised some big questions about conventional treatments, particularly for mild to moderate depression. If they're not always the answer, what else should we be looking at? This seems like the perfect time to talk about nutritional psychiatry.
Absolutely. Given these challenges and, frankly, the ethical issues around just prescribing a placebo knowingly, looking at nutraceuticals with antidepressant properties makes a lot of sense. Things like EPA from Omega-3. It's potentially safer, more ethical, and often cheaper.
But isn't there still some skepticism in the medical community about nutritional approaches?
Oh, definitely. There can be bias, sometimes a lack of integrated knowledge. Doctors aren't always trained extensively in nutrition. And again, the insurance system often doesn't cover these things, which subtly devalues them in practice.
Which can unfortunately make patients feel like their doctor is maybe a bit dismissive or, I don't know, not up to date.
It's a real barrier. But the evidence for omega-3 and specifically EPA is actually pretty robust now. It's not just fringe speculation.
Okay, tell us about that evidence.
Well, it starts with epidemiology. Studies consistently show links between lower fish consumption, meaning lower omega-3 intake, and higher rates of depression in populations.
Okay, that's a correlation. What about intervention trials?
Right. So our team actually did one of the very first double-blind placebo-controlled trials back in 2003. Showed omega-3 had antidepressant effects. Then the first meta-analysis supporting it came out in 2007.
So this isn't brand new research then?
Not at all. And since then, research, including another big meta-analysis we did in 2012, really pinpointed EPA rather than the other main omega-3, DHA, as the primary driver of the antidepressant effect, often linked to its anti-inflammatory actions.
Anti-inflammatory.
Yeah.
So we hear that a lot, connection with overall health. So EPA is key. What does the efficacy look like compared to, say, standard antidepressants? You mentioned NNTs earlier.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. Formulations rich in EPA, like 60% or more EPA, are more effective than those high in DHA for depression, while omega-3s generally have an NNT around 8, which is similar to many antidepressants.
Okay, similar NNT.
Pure EPA formulations, or those very high in EPA, show an NNT of around 4.
4. Okay, that's a big difference. NNT of 4 versus 7, 8, or 9. That sounds clinically quite significant.
It really is.
Yeah.
It suggests a much higher chance of an individual benefiting directly compared to placebo. For every 4 people treated, 1 gets that extra benefit. That's quite potent, especially considering the safety.
Right. What about safety and side effects for EPA?
Generally, it's very well tolerated. The most common things are mild, maybe some fishy burps or mild digestive upset. There's a theoretical, very slight increased risk of bleeding, but it's generally considered very safe.
Much safer profile than many standard antidepressants then.
Definitely. Which makes it a really attractive option, especially for groups where medication risks are a bigger concern, like during pregnancy or breastfeeding, or for children and adolescents.
And is there a recommended dose?
Yes, the International Society for Nutritional Psychiatry Research, or ISNPR, suggests 1 to 2 grams of net EPA per day. That can be from a pure EPA supplement or one where the EPA to DHA ratio is at least 2 to 1. Quality matters, though you need to ensure the supplement actually contains what it claims. Prescription versions can help there.
Okay, so how does EPA actually work? You mentioned anti-inflammatory effects.
That's a big part of it. There's growing evidence linking depression to chronic low-grade inflammation in the body and brain. EPA seems to help dial that down. It can modulate the gut microbiome, reduce pro-inflammatory signals, and even promote neuroprotection and the growth of new neurons in areas like the hippocampus, which is crucial for mood regulation.
So it's working on multiple pathways related to brain health and inflammation.
Exactly. And it's also involved in the resolution of inflammation, helping the body actively switch off the inflammatory process, not just blocking signals.
This all sounds very promising. So why isn't pure EPA a standard first-line treatment everywhere yet? You mentioned that bench-to-bedside gap.
Yes, the infamous implementation gap. It takes, on average, something like 17 years for research findings to become routine clinical practice. It's a huge challenge.
17 years. Wow.
If we compare EPA to, say, duloxetine again, the clinical efficacy NNT-wise is arguably better for pure EPA, right? NNT of 4 versus 7 than 9. But look at the other factors. Preclinical research. Omega-3 actually have more supporting papers, 186 versus 53 for duloxetine.
So the basic science is strong.
Very strong. But clinical trial quality. Duloxetine had those 2 large high-quality trials needed for FDA approval. Omega-3 has had more trials, about 13, but the quality has been mixed, especially early on. Lots of poor quality studies led to inconsistent results, which muddies the water.
Okay, so inconsistent trial quality historically is one hurdle.
And there's product reliability. Duloxetine is a regulated drug with patent protection. Omega-3 supplements. The quality can be all over the place. That makes doctors hesitant.
Understandable. And the official guidelines.
Duloxetine has FDA approval, promotion by medical societies. Omega-3 is usually used off-label for depression, less formal promotion, and sometimes, frankly, unprofessional marketing from supplement companies doesn't help its credibility.
So it's a complex picture involving trial history, regulation, quality control, and how information is disseminated. How do we bridge this gap then?
This is where academic societies play a massive role. Groups like ISNPR and the Taiwanese Society for Nutritional Psychiatry Research, TSNPR, are crucial. ISNPR published practice guidelines on using omega-3s for depression in a major journal.
What do those guidelines cover?
Things like how to interview patients about it, the importance of assessing supplement quality, specific dosages, monitoring for side effects, tailoring it to different patient groups, really practical stuff.
And TSNPR.
They're focused on training clinicians, fostering collaboration between different specialties, working with industry to improve quality and access. And it's having an effect. In Taiwan, fish oil imports shot up over 1,500% between 2018 and 2023.
1,500%. That shows change is possible when there's a concerted effort?
Absolutely. It shows that this translational research can actually make it into practice.
Which leads us perfectly into our final area, the importance of how these decisions are made. Shared decision-making.
Yes. This is moving beyond just the what of treatment to the how. How do you and your doctor decide on the best path for you?
It feels like a fundamental shift. The latest NICE guidelines you mentioned, they don't just talk about evidence. They explicitly say doctors should discuss options and be cautious with meds for milder cases. That sounds like shared decision-making, or SDM, in action.
Exactly. It's moving away from the old doctor knows best, paternalistic model towards a collaborative partnership. The idea is to blend the best scientific evidence with your personal preferences, your values, your life situation.
So how does that actually work in the clinic? What are the steps?
There's a nice framework, often broken down into 3 parts: team talk, option talk, and decision talk.
Okay, team talk. What's that involve?
It's about establishing that collaborative relationship right from the start, asking open-ended questions, not just what's wrong, but who came with you today? Or what's your main goal for this visit?
Trying to understand the person and their context.
Exactly. And exploring their understanding.
Yeah.
Have you heard about depression? Do you think this might be that you're experiencing? It's about understanding their perspective, not just slapping on a label. Building rapport.
Okay, so establish the team first, then option talk.
Right. This is where you lay out the choices. For mild depression, you discuss both medication and non-medication options like EPA, therapy, lifestyle changes, watchful waiting. You talk honestly about the pros and cons of each.
Including addressing fears the patient might have, like worries about medication side effects or addiction.
Absolutely crucial. And importantly, mentioning that guidelines often advise against routine medication for milder cases, presenting the full picture.
Makes sense. Then finally, decision talk.
This is where you explore the patient's preferences, asking directly, given these options, what feels right for you? Do you want to try medication? Are you hesitant? Do you need more time?
And acknowledging that choosing not to take medication right now is a valid choice.
Yes. Recognizing that no prescription can be a therapeutic decision in itself, it builds trust. You'd also discuss practicalities like, if they're considering fish oil, it's usually self-paid, manage expectations about what it can and can't do.
And emphasizing that no single thing is a magic cure.
Precisely. Stressing that whether it's meds or EPA, it's usually part of a bigger picture. You encourage discussion about lifestyle stress, sleep, diet, exercise, work-life balance. It empowers the patient.
So, boiling it down, what are the absolute core pillars of this SDM approach?
I'd say 3 things. Knowledge the provider brings the medical expertise, the patient brings their life expertise. Communication open, honest, two-way dialogue, and respect, fundamentally valuing the patient's autonomy and dignity.
It really sounds like a way to navigate the uncertainties in medicine together, ensuring the treatment plan actually fits the person.
That's the goal. Aligned goals, shared understanding.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, it feels like the way we think about treating depression, especially in milder forms, is really starting to shift.
Definitely. We've sort of deconstructed some myths around the medication first always approach, looking critically at the evidence.
And we've seen the real potential of nutritional psychiatry, specifically EPA, as a scientifically backed, safer first-line option for many. It's about expanding the toolkit.
And crucially, we've highlighted the power of shared decision-making, empowering you to be an active, informed partner in your own healthcare journey. It's not about ditching traditional medicine, but integrating approaches for truly personalized care.
Making care tailored, safe, and effective for the individual.
This leaves us with a final thought to consider.
Yeah, here's something to mull over. How do we make this happen more broadly? How can we as a society really embed this integrated, personalized, shared decision-making approach so that thinking outside the box just becomes, well, the normal way we support mental well-being for everyone?